The music played loudly in the cafe. The toastmaster kept the guests entertained and made toasts in contests. Relatives and friends of the young couple sat at the long table and shouted "kiss" loudly. The young bride in a snow-white dress with open shoulders and fluffy skirts looked like a fragile angel. The groom in a gray austere suit beside her seemed serious and reserved. The relatives looked at the beautiful couple at the head of the table with approval and emotion. The groom's friends looked at him with undisguised envy and cast enthusiastic glances at the young bride, now his wife. The oldest person at the wedding was the groom's grandmother, 80-year-old Evelyn, an intelligent-looking, thin old woman with a fashionable haircut of gray hair, wearing a dark blue dress with a white lace collar. She did not drink, hardly ate, looked good-naturedly at the fun, and remembered her wedding 60 years ago. "How are you, Grandma?" "Not bored. Shall we dance?" He was excited about dancing and drinking champagne, and his grandson Evans sat down on a chair next to his grandmother. "I don't have to. You and your wife dance, and I'll watch. I wanted to ask you, where are you going to live after the wedding?" "Where?" "We rented an apartment. My parents helped with the money." Evans wiped his forehead with a handkerchief. "Here's what I was thinking. I have a big apartment, lots of space in the center. Anyway, it will be yours when I die. Live at my place, and I'll have more fun with you. I'll help in any way I can, and you don't have to spend money on a rented apartment." Evelyn looked at her grandson with love and warmth. "Well, Grams, you're a real piece of work. And Mother said that I should never impose on you in any way our society with Emily. Won't you regret it? We'll squeeze you a little, and Emily. I love her, of course, but I don't know what kind of hostess she is. Are you suggesting that there are devils in the still waters? We'll see. You can always get an apartment if we don't get along. I'll make room for you tomorrow. Maybe I'll have great-grandchildren." Evelyn smiled slyly. "Thank you, Grandma. You're my gold." Evans kissed Grandma on her wrinkled cheek. Emily came up to them in a cloud of snow-white lace and silk. "Grandma gave us a gift, offered to live with her. The house is historic, by the way." Evans put his arm around his young wife's waist. She lowered her eyes, hiding under her fluffy lashes a jubilant look. "We'll try not to trouble you," the girl babbled, smiling sweetly. Rhythmic music picked up the young people and swirled them around among the dancing couples. The next day, Evelyn went around her property, choosing a room for the newlyweds. The living room is large, bright, but passable, not very comfortable for the newlyweds. The former nursery is a little small. That's where I'd rather be. But my bedroom with my husband is just right. It's bright and spacious, with a separate entrance. I just need to free up the closets. And she spent the day quietly took out his stuff, shoveled into the closets. Only in the evening sat down on the couch to rest and dozed off. "Evelyn, it's not a good idea." My husband looked at me sternly and frowned under his bushy eyebrows. "Why didn't you consult me?" "Why didn't you?" said Evelyn, but then she stopped. "Do you really think I can't see from here? It hurts my heart to see you." He shook his head reproachfully and disappeared. Evelyn shuddered and woke up. Her heart beat unevenly, and often her mouth was dry, and she could barely open her heavy eyelids. I didn't realize right away that Calvin had been dreaming, so clearly I'd seen him, heard his voice. Not a good dream. I haven't dreamt in a long time. And really, why didn't I consult? Maybe I was too hasty in asking the young people to live with me. But what's done is done. She glanced at the photograph on the shelf of the bookcase. What now? You can't take it back. And what could happen? I do not let strangers live, my own grandson and his wife. And the girl does not give the impression of a con artist or a seeker of rich suitors. It's just a dream. She waved away bad thoughts. The next day, a large black car pulled up to the entrance of the high-rise, from which Evans got out, followed by Emily, easily jumped out, and fell right into the open arms of her young husband. She looked up at the turret crowning the roof of the high-rise and gasped with delight. "We're really going to live here. All the girls will be envious of me. And can I invite them just once to visit? They won't believe me. About the girlfriends, that's for my grandmother. She's not strict, but she likes order." Evans kissed his wife, and they hugged each other and went into the entryway. Evans left Emily in Grandma's care to familiarize herself with the apartment, and he went down to get his things. Emily walked through the rooms with high ceilings, looked out the window in amazement, whereas in the palm of her hand, the Capitol grew before her. She expected to see antique museum furniture, but Evelyn explained that they, also then young, wanted modern, though no longer fashionable now. "Your room is here." Grandmother opened the door to Emily. "This was my bedroom with my husband." "Oh, how beautiful." Emily almost clapped her hands, but stopped in time under Evelyn's mocking gaze. The old woman understood her grandson's young wife. She had come to New York in 1956 to study to be an actress, as young as she was. But the theater school did not take her. She never returned home. Soon she met a young subway builder, got married. Her husband's career skyrocketed along party lines. They were given this big apartment. A daughter was born. In time, Evelyn transformed from a provincial shy girl into a sedate lady with good manners. "Is this your husband?" Emily pointed to a framed photograph on the shelf of the bookcase. How stiff he was. Yes, he died 12 years ago. Evelyn squinted at the picture. "Good girl. And what were you, Calvin, doubting her, scolding me? Evans won't let me get hurt. I'm lonely without you. Better with them than alone." She sighed. The young ones were gone all day, coming home only in the evening. Evelyn didn't regret inviting them to live with her. There was no trouble with them. She slept badly, got up early, and made pancakes and porridge and cheesecakes for breakfast, to the delight of Evans and the shame of Emily, who was not used to getting up early and could not yet cook well. In the afternoons, while the young ones were away, Evelyn rested, paying homage to her habits. Autumn and winter passed, and warm April came. One day, Emily came home early from the institute. Evelyn flinched at the sound of the lock opening, glanced at her watch. "Why are you so early? What's wrong?" she asked worriedly, stepping out into the hallway. "I feel sick and dizzy." Emily really did not look well. "I see." Evelyn nodded meaningfully. "It's a young case. I thought you'd be quicker." She smiled understandingly. "Get what?" Emily's eyes widened in fright. "It's not supposed to." She bit her lip. "It's okay. I'll make you a cup of tea." When the kettle boiled, Evelyn went into Emily's room. "Would you like a cup?" She looked sympathetically at the pale Emily who was lying on the bed. "No, not at all. I'll be right there," she said, waiting for the old lady to leave the room. The doorbell rang, and Evelyn went to open it. When she returned, Emily was sitting at the table, with 2 cups and a teapot on it. It was the neighbor who came to pay back her debt. "Have you poured the tea yet?" "Well done. Here's some salted croutons. They will not make you sick. They're the only thing I use to save myself with in my time." Evelyn put the plate on the table and sat down in the chair opposite Emily. "Drink in small sips. Take your time." Emily stared into her cup, not raising her eyes to Evelyn. Shy silly, Evelyn pitied her and drank her tea in small sips. "The tea tastes strange, don't you think?" Evelyn asked, not noticing how Emily flinched. In the evening, she suddenly felt sick. Vomiting, even throwing up a brown slurry. She ate little, only fresh food, which is why she always looked slim and active, despite her advanced age. But at night, she felt even worse. On shaky legs, pale and disheveled, she knocked on the young one's room. "Evans, I don't feel well." "Call an ambulance," she murmured, struggling with nausea. Evans jumped out of his room, put Grandma to bed, and called an ambulance. "What hurts, Grandma?" "Be patient. They'll come. They'll give you an injection. It'll be easier." Evans sat on the bed next to Grandma, holding her wrinkled, icy hand. "My stomach burns, Evans," Evelyn whispered faintly and looked at the picture of Calvin. It seemed to her that Calvin was looking at her reproachfully, looking at her even more sternly. "Grandmother, no, grandmother." Evans intercepted her gaze. "Don't even think. Everything will be all right." Emily came out of the room, too, offering water. But Evelyn shook her head. Any reminder of water or food gave her a nausea attack. The ambulance arrived 20 minutes later. Evelyn was carried on a stretcher down to the car. Evans went with her to the hospital. He waited in the emergency room for an hour and a half. Finally, the doctor came out and reported that Grandma was out of danger, but her condition was serious. "It looks like an overdose of medication, or your grandmother has been poisoned," the doctor said, and stared at Evans, who didn't immediately grasp the meaning of what was being said. "Does she take heart pills or blood pressure pills?" the doctor asked. "She takes some, but I don't know for sure. We washed her stomach and put her on a drip. Now your grandmother is sleeping." The doctor shook his head. His look made Evans shiver. Evans took a cab home. There was no point in going to bed. He had to get up for work in an hour. He peeked into his and Emily's room. She was sleeping on her side, pulling her knees up to her chest and leaning against the wall. The blanket had slipped off her and was hanging off the bed to the floor. Before he would have tipped it over, adjusted the blanket, kissed her warm, soft cheek. But now conflicting feelings and thoughts were tearing him apart. His little wife, beloved, bright as the sun, and suddenly, an overdose of medication or someone tried to poison your grandmother. He remembered the doctor's words. Evans walked out, silently closing the door behind him. Who could have done this? Grandma never forgot anything. She didn't even pause in her conversations, picking up the right word. Nor could she forget to take her medicine more than once. She loved her Calvin, but not enough to intentionally shorten her time apart from him. She was many years old. Everything could happen naturally soon. There are hardly any strangers in the apartment. That just leaves Emily. He remembered how he had been struck by her provincial spontaneity, beauty, and modesty when he first met her. He lost his head in love with her. He wanted to protect and defend her from all trouble in the world. And yet, as painful as it was to think of Emily's culpability in what had happened, the suspicion fell only on her. Why? She is the one with the motive, as the investigators say. She came to New York from the provinces, went to study, though not in a prestigious university, but a metropolitan one. Turned the head of a rich man, got married. An apartment. At one time, my mother also said that my grandmother could have swapped apartments with them. But she only let us dream and talk about it with him and Dad in her own kitchen. Grandma suggested that we move in with her after we were married. She loved me, spoiled me more than my mother did. God, this is hard. We should talk to Emily, see if she has an excuse, proof of innocence. Evan's brain worked clearly, but slowly. Went to the kitchen, poured 2 spoons of ground coffee into the brew, poured water, and put it on the gas. I stood and waited for the water to boil and thaw. Then I ran into my grandmother's room. On the nightstand by the bed, no apothecary packages. A box of medicine was found in the overhead kitchen cabinet. Next to it on the shelf were 2 containers of pills. Evans looked up the instructions for them on the internet on his phone. Yes, one was strong. An overdose was imminent. He read a long list of possible complications, each of which could have had irreparable consequences for Grandma. The container was half empty. The medication was available just by opening the cupboard. Could Emily have slipped them to Grandma or not? And who, if not her? When he introduced his future wife to his parents, his father did not hide his opinion about provincial women who want to marry a rich man by any means. Yes, and friends openly hinted at Emily's self-serving love for him. I didn't believe it. He drank strong, bitter coffee, and it was rapidly lightening outside the window. I'm not ready to hear the truth. I don't want to. But one day she might want to get rid of me, too. Evans shuddered, the thoughts sending him into a fever. That's it. That's enough. There's so many things to think about. Already got my wife written down as a murderer. Evans grinned incredulously. Didn't you go to bed? Emily's voice made Evans shudder. How's Grandma? She was standing in the kitchen doorway in shorts and a t-shirt. Grandma is better. The doctor said it was no longer life-threatening. He spoke and stared intently into her eyes, afraid to miss the slightest reaction, a hint. But Emily looked at him innocently and incomprehensibly. Danger. I thought she had simple poisoning or indigestion. Old people can get that. They tried to poison her. Evans said the words clearly and slowly. Poisoned? By whom? Why? Her eyelashes fluttered. Emily's eyes widened in surprise. You can't play it that way. Or, I've known her less than a year. What do I even know about her? Evans grimaced in disgust at his own thoughts. My suspicion was now killing all my feelings for her. That's it. That's enough. It's time to stop. He brought the empty cup to his lips. A few bitter lumps fell into his mouth. Evans grimaced as he chewed them. There was the sound of water coming from the bathroom. In his concentration, he didn't notice that Emily was out of the kitchen. Evans opened the cabinet door under the sink and dumped the sediment from the cup into the trash can. How I didn't guess right away. He took the bucket in his hands. At the bottom was a paper milk carton and candy wrappers. With his hand, he pushed away the bright candy wrappers and immediately saw a plastic jar from under the pills, the very ones that give a lot of complications. The jar was empty. Thoughts swirled in my head. Assuming Grandma threw out the empty package herself, that means there should be almost a whole one in the cupboard. And there are less than half the pills. It doesn't add up again. Or does it add up? Evans put the bucket down. The thought of fingerprints on the jar flashed, but he stopped himself. I'm starting to play detective. Emily will say she dropped the package, took it in her hand to put it back in the cupboard. He rinsed the cup and splashed water in his face. When Emily came out of the bathroom, Evans was putting on his shoes in the hallway. Leaving already. When are we going to see Grandma? She asked innocently. They won't let us see her yet. The doctor said she can't be disturbed. I'll call to see how she is. Maybe we can go tomorrow. He lied and hated himself for it. Evans, what's going on? Emily, with a towel over her head, smelling of fragrant shampoo and shower gel, came up close and peered into her eyes. Just tired. I haven't slept, remember? He smiled through his strength and ran his finger over her temple, brushing away a drop of water. I'll see you tonight. Evans. Emily shouted after him, but he had already slammed the door behind him. Evans barely made it through the day. He went home early. Emily hadn't returned from the institute yet. His heart hammered excitedly, palms sweating, when he found a completely empty trash can under the sink. So Emily destroyed the only evidence. Was it worth going around throwing out the trash for an empty milk carton? I don't think so. Well, that doesn't speak in her favor either. He thought disappointedly. He was sitting at the kitchen table in the fading evening twilight, pondering when Emily came in. She turned on the light, saw Evans, and flinched in surprise. "You scared me," she said in a trembling voice. "We need to talk. Sit down." He pointed to the chair across the hall. "Let me just change." She turned to leave. "You'll make it. Sit down," Evans almost shouted. Emily timidly sat down on the edge of her chair and looked at her husband fearfully. Did you slip Granny the pills, causing her to overdose?" "Why? Is there something you miss? Is she bothering you?" I didn't slip her anything." Her voice trembled, and there were tears in her eyes. "Evans, how could you?" Tracks of tears glistened on her cheeks. "I wish I could believe you, Emily. An apartment in Midtown New York isn't worth my grandmother's life. It will be ours sooner or later. Yours. How are we supposed to live with that? I can't trust you anymore. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. We have no common property, no children, we'll be divorced quickly, no trial." "You're wrong." Emily's voice suddenly got stronger, and she grinned crookedly. "I'm going to disappoint you. The divorce will have to wait. I don't understand you." Evans kept his eyes on his wife in confusion, as if he were seeing her for the first time. From a gentle, quiet girl, a fragile angel, as her friends called her, she had suddenly become defiant and confident. Emily silently took a 4-folded sheet of paper out of her purse, unfolded it, and placed it on the table in front of Evans. He reread the ultrasound report twice before he understood what was written. "Why didn't you tell me?" Now his voice trembled. "I didn't have time." Evans caught no tears or remorse in her words. Emily got up and left the kitchen, closing the door tightly behind her. Evans sat for a while, staring at her and at the sheet of paper on the table in confusion. What if, really? Sometimes a lie seems truer than the truth. Then he went to their room, crouched on the edge of the bed where Emily lay. She looked at him and waited. "I don't like what happened to Grandma. What's going on between us now? It turns out I don't know you at all. I'm not going to file for divorce just yet. But you can't live here anymore either. I'll get an apartment until Grandma comes home from the hospital, and you'll move in. Pray to God it's okay. I don't know what to do, how to treat you. It pains me that you tried to poison my grandmother, that I can no longer trust you. Just tell me why." Emily didn't make excuses, didn't cry, didn't beg for forgiveness. Evan spent a restless night on the living room couch. As much as he pondered, he couldn't decide what to do. Is it worth rushing to a conclusion? Grandma is alive. I'm going to be a father. Maybe when the baby comes, everything will fall into place. I guess I couldn't resist the temptation and the urge to rush things. Evans finally fell asleep, allowing time to help make the right decision. But suddenly, Emily appeared with a knife in front of Evan's bed.